G'day and welcome to the Pursuit of Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Rosie Burrows, and I'm on a journey to find my freedom so that I can help you do exactly the same. Join me each week as I share the stories of everyday people who have found their own paths to freedom. I'm not going to focus on job titles and accolades because I don't care about that stuff, and neither should you. I want to uncover what truly makes you tick. Who are you when you step away from society's expectations and follow your heart? I still haven't figured it out yet. Have you? Either way, buckle up because it's going to be one hell of a ride. Welcome back to the pod, everybody. I'm Rosie. This is the Pursuit of Freedom. I'm improvising with recording today. You might hear cicadas in the background. You might even hear my dog. But let's just roll with it. And joining me today is Angilie Kapoor. She lives in Bali at the moment, and her mission is to wake up as many people as possible. Angilie's all about breaking the status quo to find clarity and purpose, to live a meaningful life that is in alignment with her true self. She's also a leadership coach and encourages others to do the same as her. Angilie, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I just want to go right into the questions because I hate beating around the bush here. Let's start with a deep question, or I think it's pretty deep. People often ask when you meet someone, for the first time, you might be at a networking event or anywhere. They go, "Oh, what do you do?"
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that question?
Well, a long time ago, a few years before I got into coaching, I used to answer that with, well, I'm a healthcare manager, things like that, what I was doing as a job at the time. But what happened is I actually got laid off from a management position. And during that period of time, when somebody would ask me that, well, what do you do? I no longer knew what to say. I was no longer a healthcare manager. I wasn't working. But at the same time, I was really uncomfortable, and I felt a lot of shame about being laid off, even though, it wasn't anything that had to do with anything that I did. It was just the circumstances of the company. But yeah, I didn't want to tell people that I got laid off, that I wasn't working, that I was in between jobs. And it was really a period of time for me where I found myself in this identity crisis, and where I started to look at myself as, oh my gosh, for all of these decades, my identity has been wrapped up in what I did as a career. But I really had to look at myself and be like, since that kind of got, brutally ripped away, who was I now? When people ask that, what do you do? Really, that became a very thought-provoking, deep question. Whereas before, it was just conversation. That's how that experience really taught me about identity, and how, of course, with us in Western cultures, we do really wrap our identity into what it is that we do. And since then, I've really been about, I'm more than just my job title.
Yes.
Even though I am a leadership coach, that's what I do for a living. That's how I make an income. That's not necessarily who I am. I'm also, Angilie is also, a woman, a wife, a daughter, a sister. I love salsa dancing. I love singing karaoke. So there's so much more to me than my job title.
Oh,
yeah.
I love that because I never know how to answer the question, what do you do? I'm always doing a million different things. I change my mind, and I don't like to identify myself based on what I do.
Exactly.
There's more to me than a job title. And in fact, I'm thinking of a friend I have. She calls herself an anti-career coach because she really believes we're more than our job title. And I believe that so much. So if I came to you, you answered this a little bit before, but if we got a deeper answer and I said to you, Angilie, who are you? How would you answer that?
Yeah, today I would say, well, I am somebody who recognizes that we have a consciousness crisis in the world, and I am working to address that. I'm working to wake people up and help them to recognize that they have everything within them that they need to be successful and to live a life that they truly love. So that would be my answer today. And I'm totally comfortable with it. I don't feel weird saying it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I would answer today.
I feel so many of us don't actually know who we are. And we
Yes.
wouldn't, I'm working on this. So I'm
Mhm.
going to say us because I include myself. We don't know where to start or how to answer the question who we are.
Right.
So do you have any advice on how we figure that out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of when I got into healthcare management and leadership, I really went through a hard time making that transition. Nobody prepared me for how it would be different and that it's the use of different skills and a different approach and, different mindset. It even utilizes a different part of your brain. When you go from being a sole contributor to being responsible for a team and department, it's a completely different experience that I was not expecting at all. And actually, when I first became a manager, that's really where my experience with becoming self-aware started. I think I was in the boat where I think a majority of us are in the boat where we think that we know who we are. But when you get put in a position or in a experience or circumstance where you are kind of having to really look at yourself and say, do I really know who I am? I mean, when I started to really dive into becoming self-aware, I recognized that I did not know who Angilie was. What I knew to be who Angilie was the person that had been molded by society, the person who had been, molded by these expectations that had been put on me throughout the different stages of my life. I really recognized that I had no idea who I was. I was a complete stranger to myself. And
Oh,
so I started my self-awareness journey through being a manager, and then of course have been on a self-awareness journey ever since then because it never ends. You're continuously
right.
learning yourself. Yeah, learning about yourself. And for somebody who has not really stopped to think about, who am I? Do I really know who I am? I recognize that that can be very shocking. It can be very jolting, really, to
Yeah.
really kind of ask yourself that and kind of recognize that, no, I don't really know who I am. And the key things that I really started to look at was what were my core values? And when I asked
Right.
myself that, I couldn't answer that question at the time. I actually started to get curious and started to ask other people, hey, what are your core values? And most people would be like, well, yeah, they wouldn't know either, or they would start
Uh-huh.
rattling off like their company core values with
Mm.
the place that they worked. And I'm like, well, that's not really the same thing. I'm asking about your core values. So to me, it was kind of crazy that we were all walking around and nobody really had their personal core values. They didn't know what they were. And so that's one of the things that, now with people that I work with today as a conscious leadership coach is really figuring out your identity. And that comprises of your core values, your mindset, and your beliefs. That's one of the things that we work on first when I start working with people is just determining that, just so that they
Yeah.
can really recognize who they are. And a lot of the times it's a process. It's not something that we figure out in a 1 hour coaching call
Yeah.
or they figure it out overnight. I mean, I've had people take weeks really thinking about it because, again, very jolting to really stop and realize that you really don't know who you are, that again you've really been molded by societal expectations and how people want you to be, because we're told we have to look a certain way, we have to act a certain way, we have to think a certain way, use certain words. You can use this word but you can't use that word. So
Yeah.
yeah, so us really being molded into what other people wanted us to be and really learning to break free of that and become your true authentic yourself, really learning who you truly are.
Yeah, that's what it's all about to me. I have a tattoo on my arm that says stay true because it is so important to me. And even though I'm aware that there's all these external influences from society and people in your life, I still get caught up sometimes in drifting away from my true self. And I go, hang on a minute, whose priority is this? Why am I doing it this way? Because I feel I should? Because that's the only way to do it? Well, according to who?
Exactly.
And I really agree with what you're saying about values. I've even created a values short course because it's so important. It's almost like a compass. Once you know your values, it kind of helps you make decisions and go, okay, this is where I'm going. And it's something I struggled with for so long, figuring out my values. I felt pressure even. I even thought it has to be one. Simon Sinek said you need a why and it can't change ever. But actually, once I went, well, that's a load of bullshit, I realized, okay, these are my core values. And you know what? They might shift over time because I'm growing as a person.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right on. I believe the same thing is that when we don't know what our core value is, we don't really have like this way of being able to make decisions and be in alignment with things that we're saying and thinking and doing. In fact, I was talking to somebody the other day and, I asked her about her core values and she came back to me with this question of her own. And she said, well, define core values because I feel like I act different when I'm at work than when I'm at home than when I'm with relatives. I'm like, oh, okay, we need to have a real deep conversation.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not uncommon, for people to kind of think that way, Core values are so key. And like you said, it's important to recognize that they can, it's okay if they shift. They will shift because like you said, we're constantly growing and progressing and changing. At least we should be. I think there's a vast majority of people out there who are not. But yeah, you should, that would be, for somebody who is looking to become self-aware, try and figure out what your core values are, your core values, not anybody else's or your company's, your core values. And, something else that was key for me was getting curious. Like you were saying, asking questions, is this me? Is this somebody else? Why am I doing this? I don't have to do this. Become a 5-year-old again and start asking all kinds of questions.
Yes. Curiosity is actually one of my core values. It's so important. And when you said, go back to being a child, it's like, I remember a kid asking me once, why is water wet? And I just went, I don't know how to answer that. But the fact they asked that question is wonderful. Let's just ask these questions. We might not or probably won't have the answer straight away, but then we can lead with curiosity and figure it out.
Exactly.
If there's people listening who are going, yeah, okay, I need to identify my core values, but how the heck do I do that? Where should people start?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not easy. It's going to take some time. Yeah, it's going to take some time because that really, really stems from you knowing who you are. Right. So, I actually started looking up lists online of core values just so I could get an idea of what my core values might be. And I just ran down the list. I was like, I think I want to be determined or, I really do want to have integrity, things like that. So that's how I started was I just went through a list and identified things that I felt like I resonated with.
Right.
And then I just kept narrowing that list down until I got to a list where I was comfortable and I was like, yeah, this is starting to feel like me, And again, that list is constantly changing depending on the phase that you are in life, what's going on, your goals. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's how I did it. And if somebody, if that resonates with somebody, that's something that they can try. Otherwise, you have a course on core values. So what are some tips that you have for that?
A question I found really helpful is, who am I when I'm at my best? because we're not always living in our values. We
That's
stray.
true.
So if I go, well,
Yeah.
who am I when I'm at my best? You know, if I think back to times in my life where I just felt energized and really confident, or
Yeah.
whatever that feels like in your body. And often thinking back to childhood can help. For me, creativity was a big one. Like I used to make bookmarks and try to sell them. So creativity is another one of my values. And having a list similar to you really helped me with that. Because otherwise, where do you start?
Exactly. That's kind of where I was. I was like, I don't even know what to do. So no, I love that. That's a great question to ask, because if we ask ourselves that question, like you said, we kind of reminisce back to times where we were happy, when we weren't worried about, what other people thought of us, what people were saying. We were just genuinely happy. And like you were saying, most of that time it goes back to childhood, because as children, they are the epitome of unconditional happiness. They're just out there enjoying life because they haven't felt any of the pressures or expectations. They're just generally out there just loving life. They're not dealing with any problems, like financial problems or work problems, conflicts, none of that stuff. They're just very innocent and genuinely enjoying life. So I can totally see how asking yourself that question kind of brings you back to when you were a kid and stuff like that.
Yeah, I found it so helpful. But again, you're not going to figure it out straight away. There's no magic pill and you're all of a sudden going to know. We all want a quick fix, but it's not like that. But I must say the journey is worth it. Keep exploring and growing as a person. I remember when we first met, you said something that really stuck with me. You said, I need to be a different person when I go to bed tonight than I was this morning.
Yes.
I think, that just gets me excited. Like, yes, I don't want to be the same person. The fact that I am a different person today than I was a week ago, a month ago, 5 years ago is so wonderful to me, because I've had all these experiences and realizations. I've asked why lots and lots and lots. I've met people along the way. You go, don't really want you in my life. And then you meet other wonderful people. So such a journey. But what would you say to people, what's the word, who are scared or uncomfortable to make a change? Because I think figuring out who you are is a change. It's a big change in your thinking and your way of being. So how do we get brave? Is brave the word? How do we just start to uncover that?
Exactly. No, I think brave is a great word for it, because you hit the nail right on the head, is that it is going to take you to, you getting out of your comfort zone, you being open to change. And we don't like doing that. We don't like being uncomfortable. We don't like change. We just, if we're happy how things are, then we get into that rhythm and just kind of like that. But how I typically answer that question is, for somebody who asks that, is, well, if you keep doing what you're doing now, what is your tomorrow going to look like? It's going to look like today, right? If you want to make a change, if you want your life or something in your life to be different, and most of the time when people come to me, they do, they either want to be a better workplace leader, they want to advance in their career, they want to have a better work-life balance. And I always say, well, I understand that you're scared. It's not an easy thing. But if you don't do anything, if you don't change anything, you just keep doing what you're doing, that you have been doing for the past, months, years, whatever, where are you going to be tomorrow? Exactly where you are today. But if you just take a leap of faith, if you just take a small step, and then it turns into other small steps and you create this momentum, where could you be tomorrow if you would just be willing to step out just a little bit out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, you don't have to go crazy and go from 0 to 100.
Exactly. Yeah, no. Yeah, it's just a very small step, something small, just to, help you to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because once you take that small step and then you're like, oh, it's not so bad. Well, let me take another one.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I took another one and I'm still okay. Before you know it, you're taking all of these small steps and you'll have a day where you are going to sleep a different person than when you woke up. And then it just becomes this consistent daily thing because you've built this momentum. So, yeah.
Yeah. You build the momentum. And something I like to say is it's like a muscle. The more you use it,
Exactly.
the better you get at it and the more you can do it.
Exactly.
And another question or mindset, I suppose, that I like to get people to think about is, you were mentioning it, if you don't make a change, you're just going to stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us focus on what if it goes wrong.
Right.
Because as humans, we like to avoid pain. We don't want to fail.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
But flip it around. What if it goes right? What are the potential upsides here?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot usually.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than avoiding pain, let's move towards the positive. Let's move towards the life you want to build. And like you said, just a little step, something small.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Actually, I get that a lot with working with the people that I work with. And I always ask them, well, okay, worst case scenario. What's the worst case scenario? If that happened, what would you do? And they always come up with answers. Well, if that happened, well, I could do this and this would happen. And I said, okay, so see, worst case scenario, you know exactly what you're going to do. So why are you scared of it if you know what you're going to do if that happens, which is very unlikely that that's going to happen.
Right. We just jumped to this worst case scenario.
Exactly. Yeah. So definitely, like fear of the unknown, fear of failure is a huge one. And for that one, I mean, we just need to change how we think about failure. Again, kind of this thing that we've been groomed through our lives to believe that failure is bad. If you failed at something as a kid, you got reprimanded or made to feel bad because kids were getting ice cream and you weren't because you didn't win the soccer game or something like that. So we've just been groomed throughout our lives to have this negative connotation of failure. But failure is actually a mechanism for growth. We need to fail in order to learn and progress. Because, if you try something and it doesn't work, you're just like, oh, okay, well, that didn't work. So let me try it this way. And you keep moving forward. So we just need to change our perspective on failure. That's huge too, is, don't be afraid of failure. It's your friend. It helps you grow and learn. So you want to fail and you want to fail often.
Yes. I'm an ex-teacher and it might sound a bit cliche, but we have this acronym for FAIL, first attempt in learning. And I just love that. And if we think back to when we were babies, toddlers growing up, we wouldn't have learnt to crawl or walk or talk if we weren't failing. It's trial and error.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from this tendency for us to want to be perfect. Like if we don't want to try something new unless we're going to be really good at it. Well, if you've never tried something, you're not going to be good at it until you start practicing it. So you're gonna have to be comfortable with being bad at something you're first trying.
Yeah. That's a tough one for me. I hate being bad at stuff. I hate it. But I just have to get over that. You just got to give it a try, and you do get better with practice. You might not be the best. Who cares? Yeah. You're giving it a go. You're getting better.
Exactly. And then I always say, I mean, what I've learned about that is that, you don't need to be the best. You just need to give it your best.
Yes.
You just need to be best at what you're able to do at whatever you're doing. You don't need to be the best and be the top of your class or whatever. You just need to give it your best and be your best at whatever you're doing.
I truly believe the only person we should be comparing ourselves to is ourselves.
It's ourselves. Exactly.
Let's jump back. You're a coach now, right? But you weren't always a coach. You were in the corporate world. You had a long career in healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us some more. Was this something you enjoyed? How did this journey start? What happened? Because you said you were laid off and that's when you made the switch to having your own business. So let's hear it.
Yeah, I was in healthcare for over 20 years and it wasn't my dream job growing up. Like I wasn't growing up saying, oh, I want to be in healthcare. That's not what happened. And it was like my experience growing up and going through high school and then getting into college was like my junior and senior year of high school was super confusing for me. Like I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was being pressurized to figure out what I wanted to major in college, what college that I wanted to apply to, and how I wanted my life to be. But I was like, that's too much. This is too overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm only 17, 18 years old. That's too much pressure on me, So yeah, I was one of those wandering college students because I did not know who I was or what I wanted to do with my life. And so I started as a biology major. And then going through chemistry and biology classes was like, no, too hard, not for me. So I went into some other things and, I really found myself at this crossroads where I was like, okay, I need to figure out like a career for myself. So my mom happened to be a career nurse. That's all she did her entire life was nursing. So she was like, well, why don't you look into healthcare? There's all kinds of things that you can do in healthcare. So I actually started as a surgical tech. I don't know if you know what that is. It's the person in surgery. It's the person in surgery that hands surgeons instruments. So I started with that, did that for about 5 years, was super bored, doing the same thing. Yeah, doing the same thing over and over every day, never seeing people because you were wearing, scrubs and a mask all the time. And so I decided to switch over to the administrative side of healthcare and did all kinds of stuff, reception and medical records, referral coordinating. I kept switching jobs because, I really found myself every time I got into a position, it didn't make me happy for very long. I unintentionally had no idea that I was going through this at the time, but I was really looking for purpose and fulfillment, really looking to be able to utilize my skills to the fullest and really feel like I was contributing in a positive way to the world, really. I didn't recognize that till, years and years later, but that's what was going on with me in hindsight. Anyway, I found myself climbing the corporate ladder and then getting into management positions. And then that's when I experienced that, oh my gosh, there's a transition that needs to happen here. And so really started to learn about self-awareness and mindset, emotional intelligence, and stuff like that. I was about, when I got laid off, it was the 6th year that I had been in healthcare management. And, I was really at a crossroads with, again, going through an identity crisis and then trying to figure out, did I want to go back? Did I want to go get another healthcare management position in another company? And, at that time, there were parts of my job that I really loved, but then a majority of my job I pretty much hated, So I really decided to try and take the things that I loved about my job, which was coaching and mentoring other people, and seeing if I could take that and make some progress with that. So I ended up going to life coaching school for a year, and then I started my own leadership coaching business. And my first clients were people that I knew, colleagues that had reached out and said, oh, I'd love some help with being a manager and stuff like that. So my business was very much referral based. And, I started working with women in the healthcare management because that's where I came from. So that's what I was familiar with. And then it expanded into me working with different people in different industries. And then I started to recognize that I wasn't just helping people with their leadership skills in the workplace, but also in their lives. Like we started working on work-life balance and helping them to be a better parent or be better with relationships and stuff like that. So I really started to recognize that leadership was an aspect that wasn't just for professional or career, but really spans all aspects of life. And so that's when I started working with like entrepreneurs and just women in general who really wanted to, they recognized that there was something missing in their life, but that they didn't know what it was. So that's when I really started to concentrate on addressing what I call the consciousness crisis in the world. Yeah. Because again, I really, really figured out that we really do possess within ourselves everything that we need to be successful. We just have to like peel back that onion, deal with the internal struggles that we have to, find that inner power that we have within us to be able to do that.
I love how you mentioned leadership outside of the workplace, because I reckon there'll be people listening who go, well, I'm not a leader. What would you say to that?
Yeah, actually, I consider all of us to be leaders, and I actually call that your inner phenomenal leader. Is that part of yourself that, again, possesses everything that you need to be successful in whatever you want to do in life. It's really your all-knowing self, your higher self, whatever you want to call it. But I come from the approach of leadership that for somebody who is an official leader, like in the workplace or somewhere else, I always struggle with them because I try and get them to recognize that you can't lead others effectively until you can lead yourself effectively. There's this progressive growth, transformational process that needs to happen. And I don't know if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah. So it's like that. It's like we have to go through all the levels. We can't skip levels. We can't test in to a higher level. You can't take a different path. You have to go through all of the progressive levels in order to be able to be a great conscious leader. And the first half of the pyramid is you being a great leader to yourself. You can't skip that.
Yeah, that's a pretty important one.
Yeah, that's what I work with people on, is developing their self leadership so that they then can move on to becoming a conscious leader and leading others.
I love that. You can't lead others until you can lead yourself. And it really makes me think of, I'm going to sound judgmental, but the terrible leaders I came across when I was working in traditional jobs. And I even studied an MBA, and you learn about how to be a good leader. There is nothing in there about learning to lead yourself.
Exactly.
This is a bit of a leading question, but do you think part of the reason there are so many bad leaders, those people haven't learned how to lead themselves?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you are telling me something that I hear all the time. Whenever I talk to people about leaders in the workplace, the common comment I always get is, I've never had a good boss. All of my bosses were terrible. And so, I mean, to me, that's very telling of how important leadership is, but how we've never really taken it seriously in how we prepare and develop people we put into those type of positions. And one of the things that I'm really adamant about is really helping people, especially leaders in the workplace or leaders in other places like, churches and stuff like that. Really am adamant about them recognizing is the impact that they have on others. We have these mental health crises across the world right now. And I believe that is largely because we don't have effective leaders in the workplace who are creating these positive, healthy work environments. I always have to work with managers and try and help them to recognize the impact that you have on your team. They're not just keeping that at work, they're taking that home.
Yes.
And that's being exposed to their family, and then that's being exposed to their neighborhood and their community and then their state and then the country. I mean, it's this huge ripple effect. So trying to get people to understand this huge responsibility that they're taking on as a leader and just how impactful that actually truly is. I feel like that's a huge piece missing from people that are being put in these positions of authority, is the lack of realization and understanding that, and then really taking on that position with the real seriousness that they should be.
Yeah. It's a big responsibility.
It is.
How do we begin to address this? I'm just thinking, I feel like there's probably things we can teach children about being a good leader. What are your thoughts on that? I'm not even sure what that would look like, but is that something you think would really help?
I do. Yeah. And I've mentioned it before in different interviews and platforms, is that there is so many skills for life that we are not taught when we are school age and going through school. And I'm not saying that history or math isn't important, but if we could also be taught about health and wellness, really taking care of ourselves, really being taught about mindset and just how powerful the mind is, and learning how to harness that power to work for us instead of against us. Because most of our lives, we don't learn until later in adulthood, but we've had this programming that has our minds working against us and hindering us from things instead of helping us be successful in life. If we were taught that in school, how different would our lives really be? So yeah, I definitely think that there should be some reform measures in our educational processes to really better prepare children for, what they're going to experience in life so they can be more successful.
Yeah. And I think both parents and educators can contribute to that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm just picturing the positive impact that would have. Like, I think there's already young people who have got that somehow, and they're going to make great leaders. Yeah. Well, they already are really for themselves, but it's really encouraging to see. I want to see more of that. So any of my teacher friends listening, get to it, please.
Yeah. And again, you touched on it, is the key really is to really successfully learning to lead yourself. If you don't feel called to lead others, you don't have to. But I think it's imperative that we all learn that it's important that we lead ourselves. That, again, that's why I feel like everybody is a leader, because you have to lead yourself. You have to lead in your own life. Otherwise, again, you'll open your eyes one day and again, how did I get here? Who am I? Is this really what I think? Is this really how I feel? Is this really how I want to act? So yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people listening to this podcast, it's called The Pursuit of Freedom, and they are having those moments of, how did I get here? I've been there. I'm not sure if you have, but it is scary, and there's a lot of shame around that. And I would say, don't put yourself down. What's done is done. That's done. But okay, let's take accountability, and what can we do now? What small steps can we take now?
Exactly.
Shame's a big one. What are your thoughts on shame? Does it have a place?
I think we have to look at shame and really look at what it's rooted in. For me, in my experience, is whenever I felt shame, it's because I felt like I wasn't living up to an expectation that was of somebody else.
Yes.
Now that I know that I am myself and I'm a priority, what I think of myself, loving myself, liking and loving myself is a huge priority to me, that I don't have those shameful moments anymore, So yeah, I mean, that's what I feel about that is that really ask yourself, what is that shame rooted in? And most of the time it's external. It's never internal.
Yeah. You just blew my mind. Honestly, I've never thought of it in that way. It truly is. Shame for me, just looking back, it is rooted in feeling like I've failed to meet the expectations of other people.
Exactly. Yeah.
I care far too much about what others think and how they're going to judge me.
Exactly.
That's something I'm working on a lot. Be a bit more selfish. What do I want, actually? What's important to me? Why am I so worried and caught up in what others think I should be doing? Why am I trying to please them if it's making me miserable?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, a big one that I am always, reminding people of is, don't do something if your heart's not in it.
Oh, yeah. And whatever you call that, whether it's intuition, gut feeling, whatever you call it, there's lots of different names. Whenever I ignore that, to use the words you said, if it's not in my heart to do that and I ignore it, things don't go well. I don't think I can think of one example where it has gone well when I do that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think we've all felt that. We get asked to do something by somebody and immediately you feel it in your gut. You feel it in your chest, but you're like, well, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And you're right. It never goes well. So you know what? Just, again, make that a core value. And
Right.
if you don't feel your heart's in it, don't do it. There's a reason why. I mean, I think that's something else that we need to be taught is that mind-body connection. Our mind, or not our mind, but our bodies are trying to it's trying to communicate to us, but we just have all this junk, and we never learn to communicate with our bodies and our emotions. And, we don't, there's all this other stuff, not eating healthy, eating junk food, stuff like that, to where we don't recognize that our body is trying to tell us something through pain and emotion. And if you really stop and think about, okay, why am I feeling like this? Why does this hurt? Or why am I not feeling good, in my stomach right now, or something like that? Just recognizing that your body's trying to tell you something.
Yeah, absolutely. Stop ignoring it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And a huge part of that is learning to say no. This is a
Yes.
lesson I am constantly relearning because it's my default to go, yep, I'll do that. Yep, I can do that. And often I can't. I don't want to. It's making me
Right.
miserable. One thing I've learnt, it's okay to later on say no. Just because you said yes doesn't mean you're trapped. So I've learnt, okay, I made a mistake, but let's make it right. That works too. I would like to get better at saying no on the front end, but until I get really good at that, I'm going, oh, I look back. Whoops, I said yes. Whoops, this isn't working.
Yeah, again, it's a learning process.
Yeah. Do you have any advice on learning how to say no? I feel like this is something we all struggle with, especially women.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what's really going to help is, again, having those core values. So that whenever to filter your decisions through,
Yes.
So knowing your personal core values is going to help you be able to determine, do I want to say yes to this or should I say no? And again, listen to your body, because your emotions are sending signals through your body. So pay attention. Again, if somebody asks you to do something and that your first gut response is your stomach is clenching, you're getting heartburn, then it's probably something that you don't want to do. So yeah, just say no. And then again, I think us, especially as women, feeling like we always have to say yes to everything is us being groomed through certain expectations and molds and different things in society that we have has just become the norm. For women, it's especially huge that we always put others before ourselves. As a woman, you really have to remember we have this natural maternal instinct to take care of others, but you have to recognize that you cannot take care of others. You cannot serve from an empty cup. You have to make yourself a priority first. If you are at your fullest, then you can give your best to the people that you care about and the people that you serve. But you have to take care of yourself. You cannot continue to neglect yourself and just be burning candles at both ends and then thinking that you're doing right by everybody by putting them first. That's not necessarily the case. And it's really hard for like older generations for me to, talk to them about that, because they've just been so groomed about, no, I have to get up at, 4 a.m. and do all of this stuff and go to bed at midnight and it's like, no. You need to take care of yourself. Yeah.
Right. I'm definitely guilty of that. And it took me a while to figure out what are some things I can do to take care of myself. What do you do to take care of yourself?
So one of the things that I discovered, gosh, when did I discover this? I don't know exactly when, but it was, I was struggling with finding that balance and really feeling like I wasn't overwhelmed all the time. And I actually stumbled on this book that talked about the one consistent commonality that the most successful people in the world have. So like top entrepreneurs, top thought leaders, people in that high caliber arena of success, they all have an empowering morning routine. And that blew my mind.
Yeah.
I was like, what? It's a morning routine? So, but I mean, it made so much sense when I read this book, and I can't think of the name of it. But I mean, it completely changed my life, because it was like, instead of you being kind of at the mercy of the world, of how your day is going to go. Like at that time, I was waking up tired to an alarm, constantly hitting the snooze button, getting ready in a hurry, not eating breakfast because I didn't have time, getting a response, getting into this mentality of being reactive because I was checking my email first thing in the morning. I was really at the whim of other people and circumstances that were happening to me throughout the day. But when you have a morning routine where you set yourself up by really being calm and grounded and really paying attention, being intentional about making sure your mindset is right, making sure that you are taking care of yourself physically by having a healthy breakfast, getting a workout in if that's what you want to do, really addressing your energetic field and stuff like that. So really taking time to really be intentional and empower yourself and really determine the type of day that you are going to have, rather than being subject to the world and other people telling you the type of day that you're going to have that turns into weeks and months and years. So yeah, that was huge for me, is having an empowering morning routine. It's changed over the years, just depending on my needs and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I wake up every morning. I have a routine that sets me up to have a great day. That's definitely what I recommend.
I love that. And it's not prescriptive, right? It's different for everybody. So figure out what works for you. And when I don't have some sort of routine in the morning, sometimes I'll read an email. It puts me in a terrible mood.
Exactly.
And that just sets me up for a really bad day.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, just really being intentional, really setting yourself up for success, and recognizing that you do have that control. You know, you do have that power. It's just, you need to, again, recognize it and utilize it. So again, I go back to my whole thing that we actually have everything we need to be successful. We just need to recognize it.
Yeah. And helping people have that, what were you calling it? Like help wake up people.
Yeah.
Is that part of what you mean by that?
Yeah. It's just helping people to recognize you don't have, I mean, I went decades with really being subject to the world and other people and how my life was, who I was supposed to be, things I was supposed to say and think, how I was supposed to behave, how I was supposed to look. And then kind of having my own wake up call of, no, you know, this isn't the life that I want. I'm not happy.
Yes.
And I don't believe that we were put on this earth to have these miserable lives. You know, I don't want to go 50 more years like this. There's something wrong. And again, really asking those questions and recognizing, no, I do have control. I have choices. I can choose how I feel. I can choose what I listen to, what I watch, how I think. It's recognizing that you, again, have that power.
Yeah. Something I say, I think it's in my podcast intro that I roll before my episodes, is we need to stop settling and start living, right?
Yes.
Who says you have to settle for this life? You know you're miserable and you want something else. So let's start putting in the work so you can live the kind of life that you would like to.
Exactly. And again, it's your emotions, your body trying to tell you you're not in the right place right now. If you're not happy, change it. If you're not happy, change it.
Yeah. And it won't necessarily be easy, right?
No,
but it's possible.
Going through a journey of self-discovery and going through different levels of transformation. Yeah, I'm not going to lie to y'all. It isn't easy at all, but it is the most rewarding thing, because I am so blessed to be able to wake up every morning genuinely content and happy with my life. I look back to where I was, you know, years and years ago, where I woke up and I was like, oh God, I do not want to go to work. Oh my God, I don't want to do this, or, you know, just constantly whining and complaining because I wasn't happy. And you know what? It's like, well, you know, figure out why you're not happy.
Do something about it.
Life, yeah, life is not, I do not believe that we were put on this earth to be so miserable. It's not the way it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. And one of my pet peeves is when people say, oh, that's just the way it is.
No.
No. Yeah.
I know that. No, that would never be me. I'd be like, no.
Cut that out. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm like, no.
Exactly. I'm trying to teach my sister that. She's 10 years younger than me and trying to figure out what she wants to do in life career-wise. And she said, oh, yeah, I'll just get an office job and work 9 to 5. And I said, is that what you want to do? She went, well, no, but that's just the way it is. But I think that's a realization you have to come to yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. When I got, I was super excited when I started on my self-discovery journey, because you're like, oh my God, I just learned this and I want to share it with everybody. I want everybody to feel like me. And yeah, I mean, people thought I was insane. Like,
yeah, I can relate.
Completely lost your marbles. So yeah, I have learned that, people, I mean, you can toss in some nuggets, every now and then, but people have to come to their own realization on that.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I have a tradition on this podcast. I like to ask all my guests, what does freedom mean to you?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, freedom to me is really being happy and content and feeling genuine and authentic, and not feeling like you are trying to make somebody else happy. It's really you genuinely loving your life and living your life. So to me, that's freedom. I am blessed now to have time and location freedom, not necessarily financial freedom quite yet. But it's so freeing to be able to have that type of freedom, to know that I don't have to report to somebody 9 to 5. I don't have to be at certain places at certain times. I'm not locked down to being in a certain area. My husband and I travel. Like you mentioned, I'm in Bali right now. And 10 years ago, I would have been like, no way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's totally possible. Again, totally love my life. And I used to be in that mindset, like I think a majority of people are, is like, oh, that type of lifestyle is only for the rich or famous. Yes. But I mean, it's really dependent on your definition of success and being rich. Being rich doesn't necessarily have to do with money.
Exactly.
So, I mean, because I feel like my husband and I are living the lifestyle of somebody who's rich and famous, but we don't necessarily have the bank account of a rich and famous person.
Yeah.
It's really looking at what does being rich, what does being successful mean to you? Not what you're being told to believe.
Yes.
Yeah, what does it mean to you?
I love that you said it's not necessarily tied to money. Totally agree with that. And it makes me think of, I'm not sure if you've heard of Ramit Sethi, but he's in the finance space, but he's into the psychology side of it. And he is all about building your rich life. And again, very little of it is to do with money.
Exactly.
Could be a part of it. But yeah, what is your rich life? Figure out what you want it to look like. It's going to look different for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think what we've really uncovered in this podcast is it's perception.
Yes.
It's trying to figure out how you feel, what you think, how you define things, how you want to live, and not trying to live up to somebody else's expectations. I mean, most of those expectations are set by people we don't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how crazy is that? Yeah.
It's
really start thinking about who you are and the life you want. And I mean, like I said, it's completely possible to have a life that you love without being privileged or an elite.
Yeah, absolutely. Angilie, thank you so much. I have learnt a lot through this conversation. I'm thinking back to the beginning, you were talking about there's a consciousness crisis, and a lot of us, we don't know who we are. And that can be overwhelming to approach that question and try to answer it. But similar to me, you really believe in identifying what your core values are. And in the work you do, you're also diving into mindset and beliefs, and those things combined help us navigate those difficult decisions. They keep us on course. If you are clear on, okay, this is the kind of life I want, this is what's important to me, it all of a sudden becomes so much simpler.
Yes,
to figure that stuff out.
We just tend to make it more complicated than we need to. But yeah, at its core, it's super simple.
Right. Doesn't mean it's easy, but yeah, it's simple.
Yeah, it is.
And we spoke about comfort zones, the importance of taking small steps, reframing what we think about failure. Mm-hmm. That's a big one. I'm working on it. Everybody listening, work on it. I know you're going to have trouble with that one. And the other key message I've got from you is we have the answer inside us already. We've got everything we need already. It's there if we're only brave enough to just open up and peel back those layers of the onion. This is going to sound silly. It makes me think of Shrek when they're using the onion analogy.
Oh, no.
But it's such a good visual. And the other thing actually I've just recalled, and this one really blew my mind, is when we were talking about shame. And you said that for you, and I relate to this, and I'm curious if listeners do too, I have a feeling they will, that it's often rooted in not meeting the expectations of others.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Ooh. Before we sign out, do you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Yeah. Again, just listen to yourself, again, your body, your emotions, your mind is trying to talk to you, and don't ignore it anymore. If you're not happy, if you don't, feel like a situation that you're in is the right situation for you, really start asking yourself some really thought-provoking questions and start to answer them. And again, my mission and my hope is that everybody just, again, wakes up and recognizes that you have this inner phenomenal leader within yourself to be a phenomenal leader to yourself and to others if you choose to be. You just need to recognize that you have that power within yourself and start to unleash it.
Yes. And I can't believe I didn't mention leadership when I was talking about our conversation. That's a huge one. The fact we are all leaders of our own lives. Whew,
yes.
That's powerful. Yep. And I'll definitely leave your contact information in the description because I have this feeling there's going to be people who will want to work with you. Let's all learn how to lead ourselves. Whether or not we're a leader in the workplace, let's become a better leader for ourselves. Angilie, Thank you so much. I've loved this conversation, and I think we might have to have you on in the future too.
Oh, I would love that. Yes. Thank you so much for having me on. This was an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. If this episode resonated with you at all, could I please ask that you share it with a friend who you think could get value from it? And whilst you're doing that, make sure you follow and subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss another episode. And whilst you're following or subscribing, please leave us a rating, preferably 5 stars, and also a written review. Doing each of these things is going to help this podcast reach more people and impact more lives, which is, at the end of the day, is what we're here to do. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Remember, you matter, you're worth it, and you are so, so capable. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week.